What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Perfectly Blended podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about the 12 steps of blended marriage, and that's coming up
right now.
Are you a Christian and you are looking to take your faith, your family, and your future to the next level?
Then this is the channel for you.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to today's show, Season 4, Episode 3. And then today we actually get to talk about the 12 steps of blended marriage. I'm actually going to share our podcast today. So if you're on and you have an opportunity, please hit the share button because sharing is caring. I love how Christy always says that. Sharing is caring.
You need to share it, okay? Yeah. Everyone needs to share it. And then when you share it, you need to encourage your loved ones and friends to share it.
That's right.
That's how it gets shared. A lot.
Lots of sharing and lots of caring.
Is for you to ask other people to share it.
Yeah, I'm actually going to share it to our group that we have real quick.
Okay.
Yeah. So why don't you explain a little bit about what we're going to be talking about
So
today.
We're doing this month, the month of September is Step Family Month. If you are not aware, it's Step Family Awareness Month. And so Josh and I actually want to do a 4-part series this month, and it's going to be surrounding the 12 steps. So if this is your first time watching or listening to our podcast, Josh and I are both recovering alcoholics. Josh is 12 years sober. I'm 10 years sober. And both of us, people have said to us all the time, like, you guys' relationship is so strong and your marriage seems so solid. And Josh and I, over the years, we've just realized a lot of it attests not only God, like take God out of it. Of course, God has to be in it. Mm-hmm. But if you take God out of it, a lot of it is because of Josh and I's personal development as individuals. Like each of us have went through a 12-step program. I don't know how often you went. I've went through one a couple times, and it really gives so much personal growth that you can't help but become a better person, which makes you a better father, better mother, all of that. And it makes you want to be a better spouse in your marriage. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think it's super important that we talk about this because this really is at a major center of who we are and how we live our lives. A lot of times we sit back and like Christy said, we try and think and really trying to put the pieces together and we focus heavily on God. God is at the very center of everything that we do. And then next to that, what is it that we are able to put in our day-to-day that makes us keep God at the center, makes us keep our family at the center, makes us keep, all these things together. And it is our ability and our desire to continue to grow. And that really stems from our roots of recovery. And to be honest with you, and Christy and I, if you don't know, we're part of a ministry program through our church called Celebrate Recovery. And it is a 12-step program, but the beautiful thing is it puts Christ at the center of it. So it's kind of like the perfect mix that you can have. And, it's something that we've done for years and years and years now. And it just really does make a huge difference. And so we decided, Christy and I were talking and she really was like, we really should do a 12 steps of blended marriage. And I was like, that's a fantastic idea because every step is applicable to marriage, and many other things in life. But so that's why we decided today to really kind of talk about
to correlate the 12 steps to your marriage.
Yeah, to apply that to your marriage.
So what we're going to be talking about is actual 12 steps.
Yeah, the actual 12 steps. We want to talk about the biblical comparisons that go along with it as well. But on top of that, we want to do 4 weeks worth of the 12 steps. So each week we're going to talk about 3 steps and how those apply to your blended family, your blended marriage particularly. And so each week we're going to do 3. So for the 4 weeks of this month or the next 4 weeks, I don't know if there's actually 5 weeks in this month.
There isn't.
There's not?
No. I had already checked that.
Okay, cool. So so all 4 weeks of this month, we're actually going to be talking about the 12 steps of blended marriage. So 3 this week, and then 3, and then 3, then 3.
I already checked into all of that.
So 12. So she all over it, okay? She's all over it. So we want to kick it off with number 1. Number 1 is, which is step 1, is admit. You want to read this step?
Yeah, the actual step is we admitted we were powerless over our addictions and compulsive behaviors that our lives had become unmanageable. And the verse that goes along with it is, I know that nothing good lives in me, that is in my sinful nature, for I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out.
Yep.
Romans 7:18. So once we admit that we are not perfect, that we need God, it starts to help us, God, to break down the walls and at least be able to start taking responsibility and admit in our relationship that we're not going to be perfect. If in your marriage, everything isn't going to be perfect, and 50% of that is because of you. It's not all because of your spouse. It's because you're not perfect either. And your perception of a situation may have been wrong compared to their perception of a situation.
Yeah, I think there's so much when it comes to admit. And I love that admit is in the very beginning. This has been a powerful thing for my own recovery, but also my marriage that I have now. And yes, I have to admit that I am powerless over a lot of things, right? A lot of outcomes, a lot of decision even processes that happen within a blended family. I have to admit that, I am powerless over some of this stuff that, I've elected to come and be part of this family as a unit, but at the core of it, sometimes there is things like some decisions that's with Christy's kids that I'm just powerless over. And I have to be willing to admit to myself and be okay with that. Mm-hmm. And I think, until we're ready to start admitting these things in the beginning, it just makes the journey of marriage, the journey of having a blended family, that much harder. We really have to be willing to step up in the very beginning and start admitting the things that we are powerless over and the things that we do have control over. And otherwise, we're just going to continuously, hop on the insanity merry-go-round and fight the battle over and over and over and realize that it's just a losing battle. So I love that it starts off with admit.
And a lot of that comes down to a control. So you admit that you're powerless. Stop trying to control the situation. Yep. Stop trying to control things and just give it over to God. And that a lot of times releases the anxiety and the control once you admit, like, what's going to be will be, and I need to have a positive attitude towards it. And I need to be the best person in the situation that God has called me to be, not put the expectation on everybody else for them to be the best person that I expect them to be.
That's so powerful. And it's, and it's even at the end of the step, right? It says that our lives had become unmanageable. The reality of this, I don't care what type of background that you have, all of our lives at some level or another are unmanageable by ourselves. It's just the truth of it.
Because you don't have control.
Because you don't. And ultimately, if you don't put Christ at the center of your life, everything becomes unmanageable, right? Because we're constantly trying to, just like Christy said, we're trying to regain control of everything. And it's amplified and magnified so greatly in blended families, like so greatly, because we start realizing there's so many things. I mean, just take parenting styles. We've talked about that on previous episodes. Just parenting styles alone. Like, we come into a brand new family unit and we start saying, well, this has always worked for me, so I'm going to continue to do this. Well, just because it's worked before doesn't mean it's going to work now. And knowing that, this now is becoming an unmanageable thing, now you have to start admitting, like, okay, I'm powerless over the control of her children, right? And I'm powerless over the way that her ex treats me or acts or responds to me, right? I am powerless over child support that my household now has to pay that I don't approve of, right? There's so many things that we're powerless over. And if we're not willing to be fully admit these things in the beginning and understand where our power does lie, we just live in complete agony the whole time. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a struggle. All right. So number 2, the second step is believe. Believe.
We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And the verse that goes with this is, for it is God who works in you to will and to act according to his good purpose. Philippians 2:13. Yeah. So, and I just want to also talk about, I want to back up really quick because there was something I wanted to say and I forgot on number 1. So I'm listening to Building Love Together. I can't remember the exact title of a book, but it's by Gary Chapman and Ron Deal together. And it's about step families. And a good point of that was the 5 love languages. Josh and I have done a podcast on the 5 love languages too. And in blended families, it gives the example of like a parent that he knew his own child that his child's love language was physical touch. So he would give his son, like he'd walk up behind his son and like give him a shoulder rub or something, and it would fill his love tank immediately, all of it, just from that. And so then when he got with his new wife, her son, his love language was physical touch. So he thought it'd be a good idea to try to like go up and like rub his shoulders. And that son made it abundantly clear that he did not want, his shoulders massaged. So then after talking to his new wife and everything about it, he realized his stepson, his physical touch would be like high fives or like fist bumps and things like that. So it makes it important in your blended family to understand that when you're powerless, you feel like you're powerless over your stepkids, like trying to love them. But sometimes just because their love language is maybe the same as your own kids, the dialogue of that love language is different. So if one love language is physical touch and they like back rubs, but the other one's physical touch, it doesn't mean that they want back rubs. Yeah. It's not the same. So I wanted to say that.
Yeah. Okay. So
I backed up.
That's okay. Sorry. So we'll just repeat number 2, right? So number 2 was believe. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And I think understanding the way that blended families work and the way that God works is super important, that we understand the way that we believe. And that is that we believe that God died on a cross for us, right? To forgive us of our past sins. Right? To forgive us of all of our sins, but to know, especially that a whole lot, including ours, of blended families come together out of something very broken, which is divorce. It's really, really hard for us to believe, right? To believe that God truly is going to forgive us. We feel like it's the one, sin that's unforgivable. At least that's the way we're made to feel, right? And but it's just not true, right? We have to believe that God is going to restore us, right? Our sanity, our lives. He's going to restore this blended family, and we can honor and glorify him through it.
And you also have to believe that because in blended families, you're not going to mesh in the beginning. And a lot of times for the first, I think the studies have shown that it takes the average blended family like 4 to 5 years to completely like crockpot. So you need to understand that the first year and a half, when you're like, this just isn't going to work, it's not going to work, like it takes a while for everybody to completely mesh, to learn everybody's love languages. Because you have to remember, in a blended family too, you have the exes, you have the ex-in-laws, you have the new in-laws. There's so many different dynamics for this. So you have to actually believe that it will get better, that if you keep your head down, continue to put in the hard work, keep God at the center of it, that it will get better, that all of these things will eventually come through. And just because you have one bad day or one bad year doesn't mean that you should give up and get a divorce again.
Yeah, believing is buying into the idea that things eventually will work, right?
Yeah.
So we have to believe, that if we turn everything that we have over to Christ, if we turn our family over to Christ, we turn our futures over to Christ, if we are willing to believe in that and then believe in the process, like Christy said, like 4 or 5 years, eventually this is all going to come together. Even when it gets hard, we get to hang on to this fact that we're believing that it will work, because it will. I mean, we are true testimonies of if a blended family can survive, if a marriage through blending families together can survive, it can happen for anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, we have as high conflict exes as you possibly can have. We have, families to the farthest degree that didn't want things to work out. Not everybody in our families, right? Not all, but a lot of part of our families were just not okay with everything the way that it is. And it's been a lot of pushback. So, but we always believe that this is what God wanted for us, wants us for us now. And that because of that belief, we're able to know that tomorrow has hope, and that's a hard thing to live in, but we have to believe.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Believe.
We believe. You have anything else on that one you want to say?
No.
Believe. Number 2. Okay. So number three, we're winging through these.
Mm-hmm.
I said step 1. So step 1, step 2, step 3. I don't know why I didn't change the steps on there. So step 3 is decide.
So we made a decision to turn our lives and our wills over to the care of God. And the verse that goes with this one is, therefore, I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy, pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Romans 12:1. So, and this is decide. So, and this is step 3, like Josh said. So you have to make a decision. And this decision isn't a one-time decision. It's not like, okay, I'm making the decision to turn my marriage and my kids over and my stepkids over to God. I'm good. And the rest of your life, you're never going to have to make that decision again. This is a daily, sometimes minute-to-minute decision that you have to continuously make to say, okay, I'm turning them over to God. I'm releasing my control. I'm admitting that I'm powerless. I'm believing that this is going to work out because God says it's going to work out and God will bless this family. So I'm making the decision to turn them over and to release it. Let go and let God. I know a lot of people don't like that because it's cliche, but it's true.
It is, and I think it is important to know that it's our decisions to choose to give our children and our spouses and our whole family as a whole and our futures over to God and His will is hard, right? It's extremely hard because we don't know what the future is. We think to ourselves, maybe for you guys, maybe it is for us, our first marriage didn't work out, right? But we're where we are now. Right? And we have to understand that the will of God is always going to be done, no matter what. Right? It doesn't matter whether we fight it. It doesn't matter whether we change our mind 15 times. It doesn't matter. The will of God will always be done. Now, we can choose to live in His will, right? But we have to decide to do that. And when we start to decide to say, hey, I'm going to start living my life for God and His will in my marriage and in my family, everything changes. Everything. That's why like these steps, as they move closer. I always tell everybody like 12 steps. It's just the 12th. It just means you're that much closer to heaven because you're getting much more closer to the way God is asking us to live our own lives. Right? Not the way that we choose, but the way that He chooses. And the more obedient we are out of that, the better, our lives become because of Him. So, when we say decide, we have to decide, right? It's standing and arguing and fighting and peeling and whining about the small details and stuff in our family gets nothing done. It causes chaos and your children are going to run to their other parent, right? And complain about the things that you're doing. It's just the reality of it. But we have to say, this family is God's family first. These children are His first. So we have to decide on that.
And there's nothing you can do about that. Like we'll get through that in the other episodes about the 12 steps and about you can't fix other people. You can't control what other people do. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard the quote, like you can't fix someone else, but you can fix your reaction to that person. And that is something that you need to do when we talk about the 12 steps in your step family. In the blended family. Like you can't go up to your spouse and say, you would need to admit that you don't have control and you need to believe that this is going to be fine and make a decision to just let it go. Like these are the steps that you need to do as an individual in your blended family. And if you guys talk about it together as a family, depending on how old your kids are, I mean, it's never too late. The 12 steps aren't for people just that have an addiction. The 12 steps are very, very good guideline. They come from the 8 Beatitudes in the Bible, a good guideline of how every Christian is supposed to live their life. That's what they're for. And that is why, like Josh and I, if we really get down to the root, we've talked to other business coaches and things like that and told them a little bit about his history, my history. And they're like, why is you guys' marriage work so good? And you say you're a Christian, you say you're putting God at the center of it, but you two doesn't make sense. And after Josh and I have really sat down and talked about it, it's really because of our sobriety and the 12 steps that we went through and the acceptance that we are powerless. That doesn't mean we don't have days where we don't get angry or we don't have fights or we don't want to strangle each other's kids, strangle our own kids, strangle each other's kids at the same time while looking at each other and fighting. I mean, it doesn't mean we don't have those things. It just means as we get through these other steps, you'll see we're very quick to apologize or admit when we're wrong and to go back and just say it all starts with the first 3 steps, right? Like we have to admit we are powerless. Yeah. And that's why in the first one, in the very first verse that goes with it, he says, I know that nothing good lives in me that is in my sinful nature, for I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. And the reason why I say he is because one of the apostles wrote that about himself. And that, I mean, how many of us say like, okay, when we wake up today, I'm just going to use dieting. I know a lot of people use dieting in the church, even world, because it's the easiest thing and it will offend the least amount of people. So like use dieting as an example. God wants you to eat clean and healthy. He wants your body to be able to be a temple. And every single one of us wake up and we're like, today is going to be the day. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to be healthy. And it is like, that is what I want to do. But then it says, but I cannot carry it out at the end. It's because then at the end of the day, what do? Oh man, I can't believe I ate like that all day long. Tomorrow is going to be new. And then we wake up and we're like, today's the day, like I said. And then as the day goes on, it just starts all over. And that's how it is in our sin. And that's how it can be. It will be in our sin, but it doesn't need to be that in our marriage. Like we are together. We both, as soon as we admit we're powerless, like I'm an idiot. I'm sorry. Like I screwed up. And let's believe that we can forgive one another and that God can restore this and go forward from there, and then decide together that we are going to stay in this. We forgive. Like him and I made a decision. I'm going to use our marriage as an example. We made a decision to never call each other a name, and so if you haven't done that in your marriage and then now you do, and you're like, it's too late. We've already called each other names. That's not true. Like you can make a decision now together to move forward and better your relationship. That's what these 12 steps are for, is to become a better individual.
Yep.
And if both of you are becoming better individuals, your relationship will become better. And that's what we want. He said, like after the 12 steps, we get closer and closer to heaven. He says that kind of as a joke because we'll never completely be where we need to be.
Right.
So when a lot of people want to be like, they're tired because they're just like, I'm never going to be perfect. No, you're not. But you don't have to stress yourself out about it. You just keep trying and you keep forgiving and you offer grace for something that you offered grace 6 months ago because you've mastered this 4th step now. So you're still giving grace over number 1 again. It's just the way our lives work. The devil wants us to give up.
He does want us to give up, but I think that's why the 12, like following something like the 12 steps is so important. It's something that's completely and 100% designed by God, right? So the 12 steps originated through a program called Alcoholics Anonymous, but that program took the 12 steps directly from the 8 Beatitudes, just like Christy said.
Yeah.
It's a Sermon from the Mount, right?
Yeah.
And so it's directly from God's mouth saying, hey, this is what you need to do to get your life in order. And it's an individual thing, right? So it's something that we apply to ourselves, just like Christy said. So if we're wanting results in our marriage, if we want results at anything in life, this is the beautiful thing about it, right? So they always say, if you want to help somebody, you meet them where they're at and you sell them on whatever problem that they're having. And then, so you tell them what they want to hear, like this is what but then you just give them what they need. I'm telling you right now that if you want to solve problems between you and your ex, and you want to solve problems inside your blended family, and you want to solve parenting issues, you want to solve all these things, I can tell you how to do that. Right? It's work on these 12 steps personally.
Yeah.
It's work on these personally, like enact that into your life individually, personally. And then what it ends up doing is it doesn't solve all the problems, but what it does is it teaches you how to handle them and what ways to handle them, the proper way, the proper format, the proper order. It teaches you all that. It teaches you how to be strong as an individual, to understand the things that you do turn over to God, the things that we are responsible for. These are the things that we find to be so amazingly useful in our everyday lives. And now we say to ourselves, yeah, we've been able to apply that to our marriage. We've been able to apply that to our parenting. We've been able to apply that to our friendships. Like it's applicable to all things, but we've noticed the greatest amount in our blended family because blended families are extremely difficult. They're extremely hard. So, it's just really important. That's why we want to go through this month, is to give everybody an insight into something that we've never heard talked about before in blended family ministry. Is about how can the 12 steps that God created from the Beatitudes help make your marriage and your family better?
Right. And like Josh was saying, what is the one thing in this world, that we say that we want to do when people are mean to us? We want to get revenge back, and we want to do that in our marriages a lot. Our husband is like, rawr at us. So we were like, you will not talk to me that way, you know. But in the Bible, Proverbs 15:1, it says a soft word turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. And that is what these 12 steps are teaching us to do. They're teaching us to take responsibility for our reaction to how we're treated. God never says, though, if someone's mean to you, that's okay for you to be mean back. It never says that in the Bible, ever. In fact, it says 70 times 7, we have to forgive people, turn the other cheek, you know. And it's very, very, in any relationship on earth, your marriage is the number one most important one on earth to do this with.
So true.
So really quick, I want to read through the 8 Beatitudes, because we keep referring to how the 12 steps go, you know, have came from the 8 Beatitudes. So the 8 Beatitudes are: realize that I'm not God. I admit that I am powerless to control my tendency to do the wrong thing, and that my life is unmanageable.
You're just going to read the ones that apply to the steps that we've done, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I was just.
Nope, I will.
Okay.
And then earnestly believe that God exists, that I matter to him, and that he has the power to help me recover.
Step
And
2.
then consciously choose to commit all my life and will to Christ's care and control.
Yep.
That's step 3. That's the 3rd Beatitude. There's 8 Beatitudes.
Yep.
And so that's what we keep referring to. And those are from the Sermon on the Mount.
Yep. And it's so important, though, that we take these and we apply these to our lives personally. This is not a finger-pointing thing. It's something that I like to say. We need more thumbs and less fingers. In men, I can tell you, in family, it's important as a leader to be the most humble among, right? Our job isn't to correct our spouses. Okay, that's not our job. Right? It's our job is to lead our family. That's what our job is. And the best way to do that is through humility, right? And through humility comes when we're willing to bow ourselves down to the foot of Christ and understand that the way that he's designed these Beatitudes is to better us, to make us stronger and make us better leaders for our families. And that's really hard in blended families. I get it. It's hard. Parenting styles are different. And you're like, well, I'm supposed to be the leader of the house. I'm supposed to be the man of the house. I understand that. But your role has shifted a little bit, especially in blended families. It's going to take a little longer. And your humility in that is going to be the factor that's going to make the difference in the longevity of success in that. And that's why working through steps like this makes a difference inside of you, because God changes us from the inside out. He honestly does. And if we can get stronger on the inside with Christ with us, and we have a good understanding of what that means, then our families can transform, especially as men, especially. And I haven't always been a good leader of my family. I have not been, you know, because I didn't know. I didn't understand. And that's why when we started going through this and started working these steps and started understanding how God has used these to make Josh better, so Josh could be better for Christy and for my family, for her boys, for my kids, now I have a better understanding of it. And now shame on me if I don't share that, if we don't share that with you guys, you know. So that's why we're so passionate about talking and wanted to do a whole series this month on this, on the 12 steps.
On the 12 steps, because it has really walked me through my own recovery on how to heal as a human being. And every human is broken. Like, we've all experienced some form of trauma in our lives, whether we were bullied in school, we didn't feel like we were loved or paid attention enough by our parents, if it was sexual abuse, if we started abusing alcohol of some sort, if we were in a step family and we felt like we were treated like the redheaded stepchild all the time. Like, there's always something that someone has went through. Maybe they were super, like, had a friend that super just cut them out of their lives, and their best friend was everything to them when they were younger. I mean, you can meet people that talk about how they were bullied in middle school and it has stuck with them their whole life. And once you become an adult, you have to take responsibility to how you are now acting as an adult. You didn't control over the things that were happening to you as a child. So this is your steps to healing, and your marriage will never get better if you're always expecting the other person, your spouse, to heal first.
So true.
The healing starts with healing. And if you start healing yourself, it will come. God will bless it. You have to believe it. You have to admit that you're not in control of the healing anyway, of the relationship itself, and believe that God will fix it, and then decide every day that you're going to remind yourself and you're going to do it every day, and you're going to give it over to God. Yes, I'm powerless. Yes, I prayed all the time. You need to convict me. You need to knock me down. You need to keep me humble. Do not let me get prideful in this relationship.
Yeah.
Do not let me have an attitude towards him. And when I do, I need you to knock some sense into me. Like, I want such heavy guilt on me, Lord, to make me just not agree to it. Our marriage, our relationship is better than that. I'm better than that. And I want to be better for that. And it's very, very important that you pray for that too.
Mm-hmm.
Pray for God to correct you. That's a scary prayer. That is a scary prayer, because when you're waiting for it, that's one thing. But then when you are thinking that you're good, like, no, I'm good. I'm the good one in this situation. It's them that's bad. And then you get convicted. Oh, you better look out. I'm telling you. Because when I'm like, oh yeah, I know I'm wrong. Please convict me, Lord. And it's like, he convicts me. I'm like, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And then other times I'm like, you need to convict him, Lord, because he's wrong.
Well, healthy marriage supersedes right or wrong. It honestly does.
It does.
And I think that's a really hard thing to grasp. It's still hard. Christy never is wrong. She doesn't like to be wrong. I don't ever like to be wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to be wrong. But the reality is, it doesn't matter whether I'm right or wrong. If it's affecting the growth of my relationship with my wife, that
I got two things.
and the right or the wrong it isn't detrimental. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, should we go to church or shouldn't we go to church? Those are different types of conversations. But I mean, normal everyday arguing, if we're just trying to prove our point, we're just trying to argue to, like, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, or whatever, just because, then you have to understand a healthy marriage supersedes all this right or wrong. She can be right, or she can be wrong, and I can be right. And I could let her have that conversation and win that argument. It's fine. It's not worth the tension in our marriage to argue about that stuff. It's just not. It's just not.
No.
Right?
And I mean, think about it. Like, it's like you throw a huge temper tantrum, like, that you're being a brat. And I think it happens more so with women. We're just like, we're digging our heels in, like, no, I'm being a brat. And then they give in to us, and then we're like, you kind of feel bad about it. Like, oh man, I threw a huge fit and now he gave me my way. It's the same thing. Like, a lot of times he doesn't argue with me and he just lets me, like, okay, she thinks she's right. I'll just let her be right. And it'll be like a day or two later and I'm like, I was wrong the whole time. And he never said anything. And then I'll have to text him and be like, I am so sorry. Like, you were right. And I was wrong. And he doesn't rub in my face, nothing. He'll just laugh like he does now. He'll just laugh. He's like, I knew you'd eventually figure it out on your own, But what I was writing down is that sometimes we start fighting against each other in marriage, and it's because you're right. And so you're not even like listening to them. Yeah. But then once you actually open up your eyes and your heart and you hear what they're saying, they are right too. And there is a possibility in a lot of arguments and a lot of situations that you're both right. Your perceptions are different. But if you put yourselves in the other person's shoes and started looking at it through their eyes, you're like, no, actually, I can see how they feel that way. And they are right. In their scenario, they're right. And in my scenario. So that's when you have to start not keeping score. I've said something like that before, like, if you're keeping score, you're not visualizing your partner on the same team as you. Yep. And that is a huge starting off point. That should be a huge red flag right there. Yep. Because you and your partner are on the same team. There is no score. There's no score. Because if you're keeping score, you're both losing.
Yeah. If one's losing, you're both losing. I mean, and that's just the truth of it. And if you're busy trying to conquer the other person, then you're missing the whole point
of hurting yourself.
Of what we're even trying to do with this podcast in general. And that's why today we want to start this with this whole month, this series of the 12 steps, because we have to individually get better. We have to. We can't tell our spouses that they need to go and do more work. I read something, this was probably last year before, about a couple that run retreats and stuff for other couples, and they say you can make your marriage good without your spouse. And I understand the point of that. I understand the point of it, but I think that's very misleading, right? We have to individually grow so we can grow together. And that's the truth of it. But if all we care about is our own individual growth and not how that's applicable to our family, to our spouse, to, like Christy said, the most important relationship here on earth that we have, then we're really missing the whole point. But I think the majority of people are the opposite, and that's probably why these people have found success with attracting people, is because most people don't even care about their own personal growth. They care about their personal success. And you can't get any type of success that includes relational success or personal success without individually growing. So understand, we talk about admit, believe, decide. These are just the first three. It's important that we begin this off the right way. You have to admit, you have to believe, and you have to decide. And if we're not doing those things individually, it doesn't matter how good of a parenting skill that we have. It doesn't matter how good that we think that we are at communicating. None of that stuff even matters.
No, you're on the team of me at that
You're
point.
only on the team of me. Yep. And so, we're praying that everybody gets out of this exactly what we're trying to put into this right now, about how important it is to have a true biblical personal development growth in your life, so you can take that and apply it to your spouse and to your family, right? And then eventually to your community and so on, and that's further down in the steps.
So the whole month of September is Step Family Awareness Month.
It is.
And that's why we are covering the 12 steps, three steps every week for this month.
Yep. So we encourage, if anybody has anything anything relational, if you have a step family and you've been part of a 12-step program, let us know in the comments. Let us know, if you're watching this later, if there's a replay, let us know, how has you feel like your recovery of the 12 steps, or the Beatitudes alone has helped impact your family. Let's hear from other people. If you've watched this and you've had that happen in your life and you've had that opportunity, we would love to hear. We would love to hear, because we really honestly believe, number one, we believe in the Word of God, and it's transformative to our lives. And so, but we also believe that we have to apply that. We have to actually take the Word of God, and we actually have to put it in action in our lives. So, we really pray that and
that's what this is doing.
Yeah, we really pray that that's what you get from this month. So, I want to thank you guys for being here. We appreciate it. So, admit, believe, and decide, the first three. And we'll continue on with 4, 5, and 6 next week.
Bye.
Bye.